You may be seated. The gospel lesson today is from St. John's Gospel, the 11th chapter, the story of the death of Lazarus. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill, and so the sisters sent a message to Jesus. Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, This illness does not lead to death. This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. And then after this, he said to the disciples, Let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again? And Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble because they see the light of this world. But those who walk at night stumble because the light is not in them. After saying this, he told them, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right. Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought that he was referring merely to sleep. And then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. For your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Thomas, who was called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, Let us go also, that we may die with him. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him. Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And she said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. When she said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, The teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought that she was going to the tomb to weep there. And when Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. And Jesus said, Take away the stone, Martha. The sister of the dead man said to him, Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? And so they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe what you sent that you sent me." And when he said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man came out, his hands and his feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Here ends the gospel. In Eugene O'Neill's play, The Great God Brown is the title of the play. A man is on his deathbed and he's very frightened. At his side is a woman who has become something of a mother figure to him in these last moments of his life. So she speaks to him as though he were a child. And she says, "Go to sleep, Billy. It's all right." And he says, "Yes, Mother." And then he starts to explain what he has experienced in life. "It was dark," he says, "and I couldn't see where I was going, and they all picked on me." The woman then says, "I know, but you're tired now. Go to sleep." And he answers, "And when I wake up?" She replies, "The sun will be rising." And then Billy interrupts and says, in great seriousness, "To judge the living and the dead." And in great fear he adds, "I don't want justice. I want love." The woman replies quietly, "There is only love." As he dies, Billy begins to repeat the words of the only prayer he knows, "Our Father, who art in heaven." There is only love. A statement of great beauty and hope. There is only love, however, is in stark contrast to the world that we experience. Imagine holding up the front page of the newspaper or putting a tag over your television set as you watch CNN, a tag that says "There is only love," and then watch the news. And what about justice? In reality, justice ends in love. And that when we do justice, it is a sign of our love. And we want good things for other people, justice for other people, because we are called by God to love them first and last. We hope for a little justice in the world, and we don't see a lot of it. To think and to hope that nothing but love exists or could exist for us is so unbelievable this side of death, isn't it? There is only love. It's hard to believe that. Hard to even hope for that. And in the story we have Martha. And what does Martha hope for? Her brother has died, and all of us know what this means to us, the experience of a loved one close to us who is just all of a sudden gone. We couldn't prepare for it, even if we knew the person was sick or old or ready, because we ourselves are never ready. If only Jesus had been there, she says. One of the classic lines of Scripture, because it is so much echoed in our own lives. If only. If only. How many if onlys have you had in your life? If only I had gone this way instead of that. If only this hadn't happened to me. If only I had more education. If only the company I worked for had been better. If only my parents had given me more. If only, if only. There are fears and regrets tied up in those if onlys. I remember when the pastor arrived at our house after my father had died, the first thing my mother said was, "If only I had told him I loved him this morning." Fears and regrets. We know that our love and our action has so often not been enough. Somehow didn't satisfy the situation, didn't satisfy ourselves, didn't satisfy those who loved. In verse 22, Martha really goes to the heart of her own faith, of who she is. When she says to Jesus, "I know God will give you whatever you ask."